Are you thinking about making a move to the Portland area, but you want to live in the most walkable neighborhood you can find, especially on the west side? Because that's what we're doing today in this video, is talking about the 5 most walkable neighborhoods to live in on the west side of Portland. And if you stick around to the very end, I'm going to share with you my personal favorite walkable neighborhood on the west side, and we're getting after it right now. If you're new to our channel, hit the subscribe button and tap that notification bell, because we love putting out videos every week on living in the Portland metro area and all the things it includes. I'm Ann Stewart. My team member is Erica Hagfors, and we love what we do. We love living in Portland and sharing it with people like you who are thinking about making a move. And if that's you and you're thinking about making a move to this beautiful city in Oregon, then all of our contact information is in the description below. Reach out to us. Let's jump on a call, a Zoom, text us. Let's find out how we can make your move to Portland smooth. Now let's get after the video. Well, before we jump into the first neighborhood on the west side to talk about, I want to explain that one of the biggest requests that we get from people moving to the Portland area is they want to be in a walkable neighborhood. Why? Well, it stands to reason that a lot of people want to be able to walk to coffee shops or retail, or they just want to be able to walk around and get to a few amenities without having to get in a car and drive somewhere. And typically these neighborhoods are not deep in the suburbs, because typically in the suburbs you're using a car to get to all the local amenities. But in these specific special neighborhoods, you don't have to drive a car. In fact, we're going to focus on the walk score and the bike score, because Portland's a pretty big bike town and a lot of people either want to walk or bike to areas pretty darn quickly. So let's get into the first neighborhood on the west side that is walkable. The first walkable neighborhood on the west side is First Edition in Lake Oswego, Oregon. First Edition is literally around 8 miles from downtown Portland, and it is in the downtown of Lake Oswego. So Lake Oswego does have a downtown area that has tons of restaurants and retail, very, very walkable and bikeable. It's definitely got all the things you want in a pretty close proximity. Now, you're gonna pay a pretty high price point to live in First Edition. In fact, last I checked, it was one of the most highest price points per square foot in all of Lake Oswego. Why is that? Because they're not making any more land in First Edition. You will notice when you go through First Edition neighborhood, there's a lot of older homes, probably back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and many updated homes. And you can tell that somebody took down an older home and built up a newer home. In fact, that's very, very common in First Edition for builders and developers to go in there and scrap some of these cute old charming bungalows and pretty much build, you know, a multi-million-dollar property. And it's because it's so walkable and so high in demand, you literally will see some of the most highest price points in Lake Oswego in that particular area, and they're just landlocked, so there's nowhere to go to buy more land. So typically the builders have to wait for somebody to sell their older property. But it's absolutely beautiful to drive through the neighborhoods of First Edition, and then there's the Evergreen neighborhood right directly next door to it. And it's really just feels like you're kind of going through an older, charming, almost like southern town when you're kind of winding through some of those neighborhoods of First Edition. They're only a few blocks wide and long, so it's not a very big area. But the desire for that neighborhood is so strong because you can literally walk to tons of restaurants and retail shopping, places like Holy Taco, which is one of my favorite taco places, Salt and Straw, which is a iconic ice cream place in all of Portland. They have multiple different stores for Salt and Straw. They have got an Italian restaurant downtown. They have all kinds of retail that you can possibly want. And you can walk up to the lake of Lake Oswego and cruise around Millennial Park. There's also a really great farmers market that happens there through certain months of the year. And who doesn't love a good farmers market and the ability to walk to one? In Lake Oswego, the walk score is 81 and the bike score is 69. Now, there's not a ton of public transportation that runs through this area. There's limitations to that. We don't have a max station that goes there. There is a public bus transportation that runs along Highway 43 and down through State Street. But other than that, you're gonna probably walk, bike, or drive your car. Now, it's also really convenient to downtown Portland. You can jump on Highway 43, get to downtown Portland probably within 15 minutes on a pretty good day. It does sometimes get congested on Highway 43, so just be mindful of that. Sometimes it'll take you a little bit longer depending on the hours, but for the most part, it's really quick to get into downtown Portland. And honestly, you can get to some of the other freeway systems like Highway 217 and I-5 by just driving along Country Club Road, which just connects through downtown, and you're on the other side of the freeway system pretty fast. So it's a pretty central location in general if you're gonna be in the Lake Oswego area. And again, people really love being in the downtown Lake Oswego area. The other thing is there's a lot of mix of housing. Like I'd mentioned, you're gonna pay a pretty penny to live in that neighborhood. There really isn't too much that goes for sale below $1 million. If it is, it typically needs a lot of work, or it's going to be probably scrapped for something else. But you can live in really elegant townhome and condo options in that vicinity. So if you're not looking for any yard work and you want a little bit more of an urban kind of living, you can definitely find housing for that. And if you're looking for single family housing, you can definitely get that in that area. But with all that type of housing, you're gonna be spending on average in that price point about $1.7 million. That's the average price point last I checked. So it's not for the faint of heart if you're, or faint of checkbook, if you're looking to live in that area, but it is a dynamite location. Our second most walkable neighborhood on the west side is Multnomah Village. This is in the southwest Portland area. It's about a 5 to 8 minute drive from downtown Portland. It just sits off I-5 a little bit, so you can easily get on the freeway system quickly if needs be. And the charm of Multnomah Village is that it has everything from restaurants, retails, galleries, and antique shops. And you've got all the other amenities like banks and so forth. You can walk along Multnomah Village area and just feel like you can pop in and out of stores, grab a bite to eat, grab a coffee. It isn't a very big downtown area. It's a few blocks long, but a lot of people want, when they come into the Portland area and they want to live on the west side, their first inclination is to live around the Multnomah Village area because it's really your closest in kind of walkable area that kind of resembles a little bit of maybe what you would find on the east side of Portland. Now, the walk score in Multnomah Village is 89 and the bike score is 70. So you can tell that it has a high walk score to live in that area. But I will share with you that while it's a walkable area and there is neighborhoods surrounding Multnomah Village, it's not a lot of options. They definitely have condos and townhomes in that area that you can choose to live in. They do have single family homes, but not a ton of options if you're really looking for true walkability. So a lot of times people want to buy a single family home in and around the Multnomah Village area. And what they start to find is that there's very few options that come available. There's definitely the townhome options and condos, as I mentioned, but as they kind of have an idea in their mind of what single family homes they want, they realize those homes are further and further away from Multnomah Village, kind of taking away from the walkability unless you're a true walker and you don't mind walking a while. I like to think that if you're looking in a walkable area, you're kind of looking at it as like a within 5 or 10 minutes you can get to a walkable kind of downtown area. But a lot of people find that Multnomah Village has very limited housing, where all of a sudden they find themselves looking at a neighborhood that's more than a few blocks away from that kind of walkable area, and all of a sudden it doesn't feel as walkable. That's been my experience. We tend to share that with people when they're looking at Multnomah Village because they automatically don't realize that, you know, it's not as close to the housing as they want it to be, or they realize that although on a map it doesn't look that far away, it's just far away enough that it may not be as walkable as they had hoped. And then we start exploring other options around town that might work for them just a little bit better. And I'll share one with you, a walkable city or walkable neighborhood on the west side here in a little bit, that sometimes people look at a little more closely than they do Multnomah Village, because it offers a lot more options for housing. But in general, Multnomah Village is walkable. but there's just not a lot of housing that suits all your needs typically within that vicinity. So that's the only crux with that specific area. Now, something to be aware of as far as walkability, and I like to bring this up because I think a lot of people consider it when they're looking at walkability, is Multnomah Village flat? It's kind of flat. Like on the main areas where you're walking to some of the retail shops it is, but in general, it's not considered flat. You do have to walk up some hills. There's kind of like almost like two streets that kind of go up, and you are not going to be perfectly flat in that area. If that's important to you to know that, then just get a heads up on that, because Multnomah Village is not a perfectly level, flat area to walk all around in. You will be experiencing some hills in that area. Multnomah Village also does have public transportation buses, bus number 44 and bus number 45 that runs through the area. So we do have some public transportation if you don't want to take a car around, although it does not have a max station that runs anywhere through it. I would recommend that if you're looking at Multnomah Village as an option to live in, that you have access to a car, because typically you're living within a certain radius of Multnomah Village, but inevitably you're gonna have to still use a car to get around and get to some of your major retail areas. Like a grocery store is not in the downtown Multnomah Village area, so you'd wanna have a car to go get your groceries. You may wanna choose public transportation if you're gonna work downtown Portland, but if you work in other areas, maybe on the west side, you're probably still gonna wanna have a car in general to get to those places. But the nice thing about Multnomah Village is it does offer that foodie scene that a lot of us really enjoy here living in the Portland area. You know, the east side tends to have all the cool kid places to eat and whatnot, but we still have some places over here on the west side, and Multnomah Village carries one of my favorite bakeries, which is Grand Central Bakery. Love it. Every time I go anywhere near Grand Central Bakery, I pull over, stop my car, and get a couple of items in there that I always know they have that are amazingly delicious. Their coffee is good too. And another one in that area that's a restaurant is called Yala. I just had dinner there with a friend of mine not too long ago, and it's kind of a Mediterranean style mix, and the food is amazing. The atmosphere is great. You can just walk up and down Multnomah Boulevard and kind of like almost like window shop. You know, they have like bookstores and galleries, and just has that kind of eclectic feel that feels very Portland, but you're on the west side. So it kind of fits all of your, niches, if you will. The third most walkable neighborhood on the west side is Orenco Station, located in Hillsboro, Oregon. Now, this is a healthy 40-45 minutes from downtown Portland on average, but they do have public transportation. The Max line runs right through it. So if you are somebody that needs to live on the west side, or you want to be a little further out, but you want that walkability, but you still want to be able to use public transportation, then Orenco is definitely a good option for you to consider. Because right there in Orenco Station, they drop you off, they pick you up. You can use that for going to work or going to different areas of Portland, but you still have all the walkability. They have a lot of variety of housing options. They definitely have apartments, but they have townhomes, condos. They have these brownstones that look oh so charming. Kind of makes you feel like you're in like an old world village. And then of course they have single family houses, and they do have strategic subdivisions located right in and around the Orenco Station area. So if you're looking for a community or a subdivision, more of a suburban kind of feel, they definitely have that in that area. All very walkable. It's very flat in Orenco Station, which I always bring up the terrain, because most of the time people want to make sure that they're not like climbing a bunch of hills, or want to be aware if it's all flat or mostly flat. And I would say Orenco Station is definitely mostly flat. But the great thing about Orenco Station is that you have so many retail options. You have everything from banks to dental. You have an anchor store called New Seasons. If you haven't heard about New Seasons, that's one of our favorite beloved grocery stores here in the Pacific Northwest. It's not exactly cheap, but everything in there seems to be high quality, lots of organics, great produce department, deli, bakery, but it isn't cheap. I should warn you. But there's also great Indian food located in the area. There's a bakery. I mean, there's just like a pizza shop. There's every kind of food in that area. So if you're big on, you want Thai food, Indian, American, whatever it is, they've got all of that in there. And then there's just some retail shops and places. There's also a central park. So I like how they blend in Orenco Station, the ability to work, live, and play. So if you're looking for a place where you can take your kids or your dog to a park, then they certainly have that. and it's just a big area. So it's not like a Multnomah Village, which is the one I talked about before this. A lot smaller, more compartmentalized. You can probably get through Multnomah Village pretty quickly in a morning, but Orenco Station's a little bigger. But they also have a lot more housing options for people. And if you're working out in the tech sector, like you're working for Intel or Maxim or anywhere out in that area, it's a great option for folks that are looking to kind of have that, balance of work and urban lifestyle. So I highly recommend checking out Orenco Station and seeing what they have to offer. Now, we can't forget, when we talk about Orenco Station, the bike score and the walk score. Now, the walk score got 79, which I was a little surprised. I felt like that was a little bit on the lower side from what my experience has been, but the bike score was 95. It is really easy to ride a bike in the Orenco Station area. Like I'd mentioned before, it's very flat and it's just very user-friendly. There's lots of sidewalks and places that you can ride your bike and kind of maneuver and get around. So it is a great place if you're looking for a walkable community on the west side. The fourth walkable neighborhood on the west side is John's Landing. John's Landing isn't quite in downtown Portland, but it's just right next to downtown Portland. It's kind of like when you're driving down Highway 43, you see John's Landing right before you get to the heart of downtown Portland. So if you're looking to be on the west side and close in, it doesn't get too much closer than that without actually physically being in the downtown area. Now, John's Landing does have public transportation. They've got the bus system running through it, no MAX system there, but plenty of options throughout the day for public transportation. There's a lot of options for housing. So if you're looking to, are you okay to be in a condo or a townhome? They have plenty of that as options there. The single family home options are not very many. There's a few blocks where there's a lot of single family homes that were kind of built back, in the 40s, 50s, and there's some infill lots here and there. It doesn't have extra land to build, so there's no more land to grab and take. So a lot of people buy into that area and make a lot of improvements to the homes, or they have some infill lots where builders and developers have kind of made housing available on a lot. But in general, it's got a lot of personality in the John's Landing area. Now, as far as amenity goes, there is a Zupan's Marketplace, which is also another beloved grocery store in the area. They've got plenty of restaurant options and bars. There was one place called Buffalo Gap, which a lot of youngins frequent. It's one of the more popular ones that's been around a long, long time. And the other added benefit of living in the John's Landing area is that you can literally walk to Willamette Park, not to be confused with the Willamette Park in Westland, Oregon, but you can walk to the Willamette Park, which is huge, and of course it butts up against the Willamette River. They have a dog park at the Willamette Park there. It's got a lot of walking areas that you can just take a long, nice stroll on any given day. And it's kind of nice to be close to the waterfront, quite honestly. And it's beautiful. You've got these wide open areas where you can see people hanging out, playing, walking their dogs. So if you're looking for an area where you can be walkable, you can get to retail and shops and so forth, but also be close to water, this is it. And it's also really close to downtown Portland, so you kind of feel like you have the best of all worlds. And it's just a really great spot. It's not exactly cheap, but it's not as expensive as First Edition, which is the neighborhood I mentioned in the beginning of this video. But you can still get a lot of really great options in there, and the prices really fluctuate depending on what you're looking for and what you get. We can't forget about the walk score for John's Landing, which is at a 77, and the bike score got as high as 98. So I remember selling a house down in John's Landing, and the gentleman that I sold his house literally didn't own a car, and he biked everywhere. Of course, he was a professional biker. He'd go and take his, pro bike everywhere he went. He rode it to work. He'd drive, ride it on the weekends with friends. But it's such a easy to bike and navigate area, especially if you're going to work in downtown Portland. I mean, you can literally just drop in with, if you're riding your bike. Now, of course, it's rainy weather here in Portland, so you want to prepare for the weather conditions if you're a big biker. But in general, it's kind of the best of all worlds here in John's Landing because you've got the ability to walk, bike, be close to everything, and yeah, it's kind of got it all. All right, since you stuck around to the end, I'm gonna share with you my personal favorite on the west side for a walkable community, and that is Willamette area of West Linn. Now, West Linn is not known to be a walkable community. It's very burbs. It's the burbs. It's a bedroom community. There's usually a big hill with West Linn, but Willamette kind of sits off I-205, kind of down near the Willamette River. It's its own little sector, if you will, of West Linn. It's often not known about in most cases, but it's becoming big. And to me, it's kind of the next first edition, kind of like what I mentioned in the first part of the video about Lake Oswego. It isn't a very big area. It's got kind of older homes mixed in with some newer homes. It's also it just reminds me of first edition so much before first edition became what it is today, because a lot of builders and developers are buying into it as we speak and looking for more properties. And what they do is they kind of renovate and build up. There's also a lot of people who put on like ADUs in that area, so they have additional housing. There's a lot of green light, if you will, on being able to add duplexes, ADUs, adding onto your houses. They've kind of lifted a lot of red tape restrictions in that area, so people are adding a lot more to those lots. And again, there's just not a lot of land for sale in those areas because it was built back in Willamette has a pretty good history. We did a video on it, so check that out. And it basically started back in the late 1800s, and then a lot of housing was built, 100 plus years ago in that area. And the downtown area is so cool. I love it. That's why I'm saving this one for the last, because there are a ton of restaurants. If you like food carts or you kind of want to be a part of the food cart scene, in downtown Willamette, they have this area where it's a beer garden that's kind of covered, and then they have food carts all around it. Those are really big around Portland areas, like the food cart scene. And this one is just right there. So if you're looking to take a stroll downtown, get out of the house for the afternoon, go and have lunch, take the dog, it's such a great place to go. And then there's other restaurants and pubs in that area. Of course, there's, other kinds of retail amenities. The only thing it kind of lacks is a good grocery store. That's the one thing everyone talks about is there used to be a grocery store in that area just over and underneath the freeway bridge, but is, closed down. So you do have to go to the top of a hill. To the closest one is Safeway, or you can go down to the next exit, West Linn exit, and there is a grocery store down that way. But in general, there's not a good grocery store there, but whatever. It's minutes away to find a couple of grocery stores. But you get that downtown feel, and it's just been renovated so nicely. Like everything is super clean and modernized, and it's kind of got a little bit of something for everybody. Coffee shops, you name it, it's there. Now, the other two cool things that make it really walkable is, number one, if you have young kids, they do have a primary school kind of behind a lot of the housing in that area. So if you've got the young ones, you can walk them to school. But the other cool and amazing thing about the Willamette area is you can walk to Willamette Park. I know I mentioned Willamette Park before when we were talking about John's Landing, but it has its own Willamette Park that butts up against Willamette River. And I grew up in West Linn, so I played tons of sports in this park. They have tons of areas where you can play baseball, soccer. They've got a huge playground. You can actually rent out that covered area at the Willamette Park. So we had my nephew's birthday there. You have the ability to drop in for water sports. So if it's a hot day and you want to just pop in, take a dip, or maybe you have some watercraft type activities that you want to do, that's kind of right there for you. And it's a huge park. It actually kind of meets up with the Tualatin River, so you can walk around it. I mean, to me, it's just a great additive when you live in that area to be able to walk to a big park with a lot of amenities at your disposal. And it's just really pretty there too. So, I mean, if you're looking on the west side of town and you kind of want to be in a really good school district and you want to have kind of that small town community feel, I kind of feel like Willamette is the place to be. Not a lot of people know about it. In fact, we just sold a house there and we had open houses and people would come over there and they would be from the east side wanting to move to the west side. And they're like, oh my gosh, this feels like kind of where we're at now on the east side, because people like the east side because there's a lot of walkable areas. But this is the side of town that is like, oh, okay, to be in West Linn, I don't have to be on the hill and be, far away from amenities. I can be right here in this area. Now, you do have to be okay with older homes because there's just not a lot of newer homes in the Willamette area. There are some newer construction type homes popping in. So wherever the builders or developers can find land or buy, a house and kind of, scrap it and build something else, you can find inventory that's kind of newer. You're probably going to pay close to $1 million or more to find those houses. So the pricing range in Willamette can be anywhere from the 600,000 up to well over $1 million, depending on what you get and the size and condition, but it is well worth it. I think it's one of the best investments on the west side for a walkable community. So if you're looking for a great option, then this is it. Okay, we have to talk about the walk score for Willamette because we've been talking about the walk score and the bike score for all these areas, but it's not that exciting. It showed up as a walk score of 62 and a bike score of 33. Now, I think it's completely unfair. I'm just gonna put my own opinion on it. I think 62 does not do it justice. In my opinion, I would probably rate it closer to 80. Truthfully, because if you're buying in the Willamette area, really close into, you know, the downtown area, you're walking to everything. So I don't know why it got such a low score, but it is what it is. And of course, it's probably not the best bikeable area. I mean, you can certainly take your bike to downtown. In fact, I know some people in the neighborhood who own a golf cart and they just take the golf cart down to the downtown area, have dinner and come back to their house. But it's probably not the best bikeable area because it's not a super big area to bike in. You certainly could bike, but it's not gonna be like the John's Landing bike score type situation. So in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think it should be rated a lot higher than 62, but it is what it is. But I definitely recommend checking out the Willamette area if you're looking for a walkable community on the west side. Well, thanks for watching this video on the 5 most walkable communities on the west side. I'd love to know your feedback or your comments. If you think I nailed it or if you think I missed something, or if you have any questions about these particular neighborhoods and you're looking for a walkable community, all of our information is in the description below. Hit us up, let's talk, let's connect. We'd love to help you make a smooth move to the Portland metro area. See you on the next video.